Hi everyone, this is my pull plan video in DFFOO Global, and in this video I'll be covering my plans for the upcoming arc where Snow will be featured as a synergy unit. You can check out the cropped infographic on the left hand side, which was derived from Jakematt's global forecast to see which events these are. I'll also be including a link to the full global forecast in the video description, so do check it out as well. As always, quick disclaimer about the purpose of the video. It's really meant to show my plans and the thought process behind how I come to my decisions. Given that pull decisions are usually heavily weighted based on the user's playstyle and preferences, as well as of course which units you already have built, the plans that I have may or may not be ideal for you. And considering that there's many approaches to playing this game, I always recommend everyone to do your own research as well, so that you can make the best informed decision as to whether or not you should pull on certain banners. Because of that, I'll try to touch on more behind the actual thought process and the reason why I choose to skip or pull the banners ahead. Before starting off Snow's arc, just a quick recap into how I did in Ciaran's LDBT arc. Now, big disclaimer here that at the time of this video, there is still one more event, which is the Mayfair event in Ciaran's arc, but because that event is a GL exclusive event and we don't really have confirmation on which fight and which banner will be released, what I'll do is probably cover that event in an event specific video. So I'll just cover Ciaran's arc leading up to the Mayfair event. In total there were 4 banners. So the first being Ciaran and General Leo, and that banner I went in with tickets chasing General Leo's LD, and it took me 150 tickets to score his LD. At the same time, Van's banner was released as well, and I skipped that banner because I already had all the weapons on that banner, just missing Van's burst weapon. And as you know, I never go in specifically just for a burst weapon. After that, we had Seymour's Intersecting wheels, and I went in with tickets to chase Seymour's LD because I really liked his LD call ability, and luckily it just took me 20 tickets to score his LD. Lastly, we had Elfino, and I decided to skip that banner because I have no interest in him and I already had Waka's weapons, plus I didn't actually have any interest in Ciaran's burst weapon. I ended here without getting the burst weapon at all, but like I said, I wasn't terribly interested, so it's really fine with me. Alright, so starting up on the first event in Snow's arc, it's the first 6-man event that GL will have, and there will be 2 banners featured here. The first featuring return of Snow's LD, but he'll be getting his newly released burst weapon as well, and Liz will be featured alongside him with her LD newly released. The second banner will feature the Emperor with his return of the LDBT, and Baltier will have a rerun of his LD as well. I know there were a lot of hype and discussion surrounding Snow and his burst weapon, and a lot of his utility, if you're watching videos showcasing him and a party pumping out ridiculously high HP numbers, a lot of it is dependent on building around a party that maximizes brave gains, and that's because his burst weapon has a effect where you get a 50% brave refund for every HP dump that you do, and this brave refund can actually be further amplified by brave gains effects. It is a pretty powerful effect regardless, and it is quite a decent BT aura to have, but do note that if you want to really optimize the damage based on this effect, you would need to stack multiple sources of brave gain effects. In addition to that, his BT aura also gives him something that he was lacking before, which is a party-wide ice enchant. So overall, it is a pretty decent BT aura. There are also other offensive stats tied to it, but the other stats in his burst aura isn't truly unique. Beyond that, he also gets changes to his LD damage and his Vendetta preemptive strike damage, making them more powerful. So overall, all things considered, he is a pretty good tank unit that can deal decent damage, and if you fully invest with him, you also get the benefit of getting a pretty decently powerful burst aura effect as well. Whether or not you do need this unit, I think depends a bit on what tanks you have and whether you want to build another tank unit, taking into consideration that he does require investment in terms of BT ingots. Liz gets released alongside Snow and she gets a new LD. Overall, the changes she receives makes her hit significantly harder and pumps out her damage, I guess more in line with the current meta. I actually looked over at her kit. I think she does decently well as an LD only unit. Particularly also, the changes makes her Riddle of Fire now a free skill use, and Purification becomes more powerful where it also extends her buffs and gives her 2 turns free skill use and a 40% HP damage up for the 2 turns. So overall, I think she's pretty decent and is pretty straightforward to play and could make a potentially good choice if you do need more LD only damage dealers in your roster. As far as the Emperor goes, I was looking over the changes he receives. I think the most notable changes he has is that his traps are now all multiple HP dumps, which really boosts his HP ceiling. Notably also, his EX is now instant turn, and this allows you to, for example, use his EX and then use his HP+++ immediately after to trigger all his traps including his EX trap. His BT trap will also now delay all enemies by 2 turns upon activation, and because he does get access to BT+, you could potentially apply his BT trap twice during the fight. So my plans here is to actually skip both banners, and I'll start off with the Emperor banner first. That one is pretty straightforward. I'm skipping that banner because I already have all the weapons on that banner, just minus Emperor's burst weapon, and I don't really have a lot of interest in his burst. Coming to Snow's banner, I'm actually using Snow as my auto plus attacker, and I don't really have any interest to green him, mainly because if I do so, I will have to unequip his burst plus attack every time I want to use him to auto plus, and it feels quite a lot of hassle to me. While his burst aura is powerful, I feel pretty comfortable with the current units that I have, and I'm pretty sure that I can just go all the way to Shinryu area with them without needing Snow at all, and that at least allows me to also save my burst ingots. I like Liz, and I actually have Liz EX at full 3-3 already even before this event, but she just gets released at a time when I don't really have a lot of interest investing in other LD only damage dealers. The next banner after that will be featured on Raijin's Intersecting wheels, and on that banner we have Raijin with his newly released LD, and we also have Kadaj alongside him with a rerun of Kadaj EX and LD. Raijin will receive a rework alongside his C90 upgrade on his skills, which really just brings up his damage more in line to the current meta. What's really notable is that his signature Lightning Discharge skill, which is the one that you use when he gets 3 stacks of his Thunder Peel, is now instant turn, and this translates to the fact that he can now use or reuse Lightning Discharge 1 turn earlier than he originally could, which leads to more frequent AoE paralysis. In addition, his LD and LD Call inflicts a new 2-turn debuff that is really loaded and unique. It has 4 effects to it. The first is that for that 2 turns, the enemies will have a minus 100% attack stat, minus 100% HP damage done, the inability to inflict debuffs, and on top of that they also get the standard 20% HP damage taken up, the full effect of which is also applied upon use of his LD Call ability. Make no mistake, I think this is one of the best LD Call abilities in the game defensive wise, because it really shuts down all the frequent and common HP threshold attacks that we see in Lufenia Plus bosses. all you really have to do is just use his LD call ability at the start, and anytime you pass the threshold, as long as they do not cleanse debuffs, any attack that they do will deal 0 HP damage and will not be able to inflict any debuffs on your party. The fact that it also has a 20% HP damage taken up effect tacked on to it makes it really good, I should say, because it also doubles as your standard HP damage up effect call. As far as Kadach goes, his damage has sort of been bumped up, but otherwise his kit remains largely the same. He now starts with a free skill use and a full EX meter, so you can ramp him up and apply his gold frame debuff as quickly as possible. But other than that, the way you use him and the utility that he brings still remains the same. My plan here is to go tickets in for Raijin's LD, and that's because I really want to have his LD call ability accessible, as I foresee that it will come in handy in many fights in the near and far future. The final event on this arc will be Act 3 Chapter 7.2, and we will see the release of Cissnei from Final Fantasy VII on this event. Alongside Cissnei, Ciaran will also be making a return with his LD and EX weapon. Cissnei is a damage dealer that really specializes in off-turn damage, and if you've used, say for example, Young or Cloud of Darkness before, Cissnei functions in a very similar way. Her damage from her skills, particularly her S1 and S2, is nothing really special, and in fact can be considered as somewhat low for a damage dealer in the current meta. But this is significantly offset by the fact that she can actually do quite a lot of damage during off turns, and the way her kit works is that her off turn damage is stack dependent, and each time she does her off turn damage, it actually depletes the stack by 1, and the lower the stack is, the less damage that her off turn damage does. However, her LD gives her a 1 turn buff which locks the number of stacks that she has, which means that if she is at max stacks, her off turn damage will consistently do the most damage that it can, or somewhat optimal damage that it can. And this means that Cissnei actually shines very well with turn hogger damage dealers such as Terra or Tidus or Lightning. Ciaran does receive a little bit of changes to his LD and EX on this event. His LD hits harder, and his LD buff now has bigger bonuses to the self, brave and HP damage done up when the enemy is debuffed. The other notable changes about his kit is that Mark now has a 100% gravity shift, so it will always reduce the enemy's brave to 0 regardless of the value it was before. I'm definitely going to be pulling on this banner, and my initial plans is to use tickets mainly because I've got a very healthy stash and I do need to quickly use them up. And I am going to be aiming mainly for Cissnei and her gear. I really like having off-turn damage dealers, and she's going to be the best off-turn damage dealer we will have for quite a while. And considering the playstyle that I have, which is to take on many consecutive turns without giving the boss any turns, she really fits the playstyle very well, and I will be likely using her in quite a number of fights coming up. On this particular section of the video, I'll be covering my thoughts and opinion, and I really can't emphasize that enough, my opinion on which units I would generally recommend if you are sort of low on resources to pull or low on resources to max certain units out. Generally speaking, there are no such thing as trash characters, because every character with their LD released is technically endgame viable, even the worst of the lot. So the way I do it is sort of categorize characters on how much return of investment that I see. The first category is good value, and that category would be characters that I think would definitely provide you value regardless of what other characters you have already built. And generally speaking, it's usually not a bad idea to max them out. The first character is Cissnei, and the main reason I recommend her is that, well, first of all, we haven't really had a good often damage dealer for quite some time. I think the last one was probably Laguna's Burst plus Desperado effect, but that's quite a heavy investment often damage anyway, because that requires Laguna greened out. I think Cissnei comes at a time where it will benefit quite a lot of players, and she really opens up a lot of potential options, especially since also that we will get a return of Tidus in the early Shinryu era, and he will also go very well together with her. Next up is Raijin, and I'm actually recommending Raijin just really on the merits of his LD call ability alone. And I know it may sound silly to some that I'm putting a lot of value and emphasis on call abilities, but the truth is I think that call abilities really give you a lot of flexibility in terms of party members that you can use otherwise, and it really opens up choices or options for you when you're putting together your main party. With Raijin LD call, you get access to one of the best defensive calls in the game, and seeing also the fact that it is extremely common to see HP threshold attacks in endgame content, Raijin really shuts down a large number of them. So regardless of who you have in your party, it is generally always going to get value out of the call ability. The next category is what I call as role fulfillment category, and the characters here are still pretty good, but I think their value is a bit more dependent on who you already have built up in your roster. So take Snow for example, which I have placed in this category. Snow is actually a fantastic tank unit, and if you are fairly new to the game, or if you feel that you do need more tank units to make your Lufenia Plus runs a bit smoother, then certainly Snow is a great choice to pick up. But I think if you already are quite comfortable with the tanks that you have, especially say for example if you've already built and greened Zac, then there's really much less need for Snow, and you can probably do comfortably without him as well. Same goes for Liz, and I actually really like her kit overall. I think she provides a very fun kit where it's not just mashing buttons. You do still need to plan around her Riddle of Fire and when to use Purification for example, but I think she gets released at a time when there's really so many options for damage dealers, especially LD only damage dealers already, that I don't know that even if I do pull her, will I even be actually using her or not. Now it makes a big difference if I say you're fairly new and you're just starting off building off your roster and you could use more damage dealers, then she's actually quite a fantastic option there. So hence I think her value is really a bit more dependent on whether you feel you want to expand your roster of damage dealers. The last category I like to call as consolation prize, and the characters here are generally placed here mainly on the basis that they've sort of been overshadowed on the other characters that are released in the same arc or other characters that have been recently released. Now starting off with the two BT characters, the Emperor and Zidane, I place them here because generally speaking, if a character has their burst weapon released, you really want to fully invest in them and green them out to get the most value out of them. But I don't really see it as a good investment to sink in burst ingots in the Emperor or Zidane, and I know there's going to be Emperor fans who will disagree with me here, but I really see that the Emperor is really a unit that you'll be using only because you like using him and not because of any other reasons. The thing that I don't really like about the Emperor is that his traps take a large number of debuff slots on the enemies, and we are coming into sort of an era where debuffs are getting more and more common across characters. my opinion really is that, if you want to invest burst ingots, there's probably other characters who can give you more returns on your burst ingots compared to both Emperor and Zidane. Coming to Kadaj does have one thing going for him, is that he is one of the very few characters that can inflict a gold framed debuff. There's only 3 characters as far as I can remember that can do this, one being Kadaj, the second being Sephiroth with his LD, and the third being Laguna with his burst weapon inflicting Desperado. That being said, there's actually not a strong need for gold frame debuffs. Of course, there are going to be some stages that it comes in particularly handy, but overall you can generally get by with just your usual silver framed debuffs in the first place. So I don't really see a big need for Kadaj just for that reason. Coming to Baltier actually does have quite a lot of utility in his kit. He is a good, or I should say a decent support unit, and he can also steal the enemy's buffs, which is sort of like a pseudo dispel, so to speak, and he can also cleanse your party from debuffs. At this point of the game though, all of us would probably already have gotten access to support characters that are far better as aura bot supports than him, so I don't really see a strong need to pull for Baltier. And generally speaking, at this point, even if I do get him, it's very unlikely that I will use him in the main party to begin with. The proof of that, I guess, is the fact that I did actually pull for him way back when he was one of the GL exclusive events, and I did use him back then quite a bit, but ever since we get introduced to stronger and stronger supports, he sort of fallen off the top picks that I would normally go to for support characters, and I really haven't been using him for quite some time. So that's it for this video. Overall, in Snow's arc, my plan is to skip the Snow and Lee's banner, skip Emperor's banner. I will be pulling for Raijin's LD and for Cissnei, and most likely I'll be using tickets, mainly because I've built quite a healthy surplus of them. But otherwise, if I start to run low, then I may even use gems, especially for Cissnei. That's it. So thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the content, please leave a like, comment or subscribe. Really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.